Thank you for joining us today at Coffee Cups and Flying Saucers. I am Maria Tellier, New Mexico's Director for MUFON. We are going to have a presentation today regarding red herrings and a quick book review of the book from Lue Elizondo, Imminent. So just what is a red herring? The definition of a red herring refers to a piece of information that is used as a diversion. A red herring fallacy refers to an attempt to change the subject to divert the attention from the original issue. So, what diversionary tactics have been used to distract us from the real issue? The powers that be seem to always be trying to distract us. Example of bait and switch. Originally, there was flying saucers in 1947. Kenneth Arnold saw a group of objects skipping across the sky in Washington state sky. The media dubbed the flying saucers, but shortly they became UFOs when the Air Force got involved. And then shortly, just here recently, they've been changed to UAP, which was an unidentified aerial phenomenon, quickly changed to unidentified anomalous phenomena with an A. But the U isn't always unidentified. Drones are UAV, unmanned aerial vehicles. Immaculate Constellation, that secret government program, has brought us ARV, which is aerial reproduction vehicles, which are our vehicles that were reproduced from reversed engineered craft. And the visitors, shall we call them, at first were referred to as EBS, EBES, extraterrestrial biological entities. That was introduced to us in the Majestic 12 documents. That term was resurrected in the X-Files, also referred to as little green men for many years, with alien becoming more mainstream. Now no one uses that term anymore. They are non-human biologics, or NHI. Non-human intelligence is a more appropriate term. Hey, this is a great picture of a red herring. This picture was taken November 26, 2024 by U.S. Air Force veteran Dennis Diggins. He's a tour guide at D.C. at the Capitol. And I'll talk more about this one in a little bit, but I like that image and I wanted to put it up there. Our very first red herring picture that you want to see was, of course, the famous Roswell incident, when one day they publish in the front of the newspaper, Army finds discs, and the next day it's just an air balloon. That was the red herring. The balloon was the red herring to distract us from the real issue, which was the Army had recovered a disc in Roswell, New Mexico. So another good example of a red herring, or is this picture here of the DC Capitol. Diggins had taken a picture of Pennsylvania Avenue, which is restricted airspace, and there were objects flying above it. They were moving. They weren't still. They were moving, like they were on a flight path. Now, that being commercial, being restricted area, there should be no commercial traffic, no helicopters, of course, unless they're on official government duty. No military planes should be above there unless they're on official military duties, which was confirmed that there was none that evening in that area. But of course, because people don't want you to concentrate that there are unidentifieds flying that close to the Capitol, they distracted us with this picture. Now, as you can see at the bottom of this picture, here are 4 lights, and they are reflected up here above the Capitol in the dark sky. That's very common. That's a light refraction. But they distracted us with this picture by saying, look, don't get excited. It's just light refraction. Well, we all know that. but everyone seems to have forgotten the real issue, which were the objects that were moving on Pennsylvania Avenue. So we're going to finally get around to talking about Imminent. I have been talking nonstop about this book since I read it in August because it was so eye-opening to me personally and very, very relevant. So you may be wondering why he titled the book Imminent, because that word is associated with another word, threat. It may appear that the book focuses on the potential threat of UFOs, but that wasn't Lue Elizondo's intent. Imminent also means something that's about to happen, or something that's impending, or something that's inevitable. That is why he chose Imminent for the title of his book. Look, whether you believe UFOs represent a threat to our national security or not, that's your opinion. He leaves it up to you to decide what imminent means to each of us. Disclosure was imminent, and many of us believe we've received confirmation already. The confirmation was the release of the 2017 videos, those Tic Tac and Gimbal videos that were released, and the Navy admitting that they were real. That was to me was earth-shattering when that happened, and their confirmation that they were real to me was the start of our soft disclosure that we're getting here. So when you read this book, UFO investigations, crash retrievals, reverse engineering, abductions, paranormal activity, and remote viewing are all discussed because they're investigated by our government with our tax dollars. Lue Elizondo investigated all of those. He investigated them to see if they were a threat to our national security. And they were all considered in some way or another a threat to our national security in one way or another. Who is this guy, Lue Elizondo, and how did his journey in service to our country begin? In the 90s, after high school, he enrolled at the University of Miami as a microbiology student. He had to pay his way through college, so he decided to join the Army in 1995 to get the GI Bill so he could continue his education. While he was in the U.S. Army, he was recruited into military intelligence, which soon became his passion, and he abandoned the medical career. So from 1995 to 2008, in the Army, he worked with the FBI, the CIA, the Department of Homeland Security, which is DHS, and many other classified programs worldwide. He worked in national counterintelligence with the Office of the Secretary of Defense. Eventually, he managed SAP programs, special access programs for the National Security Council. But we didn't know who this guy was until he retired from his GS-15 job. Yes, I said GS-15. And he started to tell us what he'd been doing since he had left the Army in 2008 and he joined the DoD working as a contractor. He started telling us regarding the UFO investigations and engagements over our military installations and their possible effect to our national security. And that's what he investigated while he worked for the DoD. That's really, though, just part of what he did, part of what he was hired to do. He had many other national security posts, including security at Guantanamo Bay. In 2009, he began with a program called AAWSAP, the Advanced Aerospace Weapons Systems Applications Program. At first, it was described to Lue as a small but highly sensitive program focused on unconventional technologies. The program reported directly to the Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA, and to Congress. Congress. Remember that. They were required to report directly to Congress. Jay Stratton, now remember that name, told Lue that he helped create AAWSAP, which would later become a program called ATTIP. But Lue wasn't told exactly what the program was or what they did during the initial interview process. Only after he received a higher security clearance when he said he was interested in joining did he find out just what he had signed up for. He became a counterintelligence agent for AAWSAP without knowing what the agency exactly did. His first official meeting was with the program scientist. He called him a rocket scientist, Dr. James Lakatsky, who asked Lue, "What do you think about UFOs?" Lue said, "I don't think about UFOs." And Lakatsky said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Look, I have no prior interest in the subject or care." He knew nothing about unconventional technologies that he was just hired to investigate. So Lue was the perfect employee, since he had no dog in that fight. He had no preconceived ideas or notions as to what UFOs were. His only interest in them is what they were doing over military and intelligence locations. He set to identify all the intel about the program that he could find regarding what they called them at the DoD, visitors from out of town. That's how they called them. They always talked about the visitors from out of town. He found an astounding amount of evidence regarding what he considered national security threats to military and civilian population. After his service in the Army had ended in 2008, Lue Elizondo began an outstanding DoD career from 2008 to 2017. He had obtained the highest civilian security clearance, serving as a contractor for the United States government. He was a GS-15, people. Unbelievable. Look, my point is, this guy is more than qualified to investigate the UFO phenomenon and to now explain just what it is to us. We should have no reason not to believe every word he says. His integrity and service to our country is truly untouchable and outstanding. He resigned from that post at the DoD in 2017, and he started to tell his truth. This statement in the yellow box was released by the DoD in an attempt to discredit Lue Elizondo in 2019. Why? Because the New York Times had reported the existence of the ATTIP program in 2017 and released those famous videos. According to the DoD, Lue could not have worked for ATTIP when he resigned in 2017 because that program had been terminated in 2012. So that makes Lue a liar. We shouldn't believe a word that he says. And that pretty much was the straw that broke the camel's back. The straw that broke the camel's back. And Lue filed a Whistleblower Protection Act claim, WPA. And, his fight to get his credibility back began. In that, you see a reference to OUSDI. That stands for the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security. That position was established in 2003 by the National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA. That act was to improve our coordination in intelligence and security. Many of you recall the September 11th terrorist attacks, it was determined that those attacks were able to happen because our intelligence agencies didn't communicate with each other. the addition of TSA and Real ID on our driver's license now. I know we all complain about it, but it's directly related to the NDAA. So since 1977, the Whistleblower Protection Act protects federal employees or applicants for federal employment from retaliation for making protected disclosures. The WPA also provides penalties for supervisors who retaliate against whistleblowers. Claims are filed with the Inspector General. So in 2019, when his complaint was filed, we learned that Lue was involved in the release of the Tic Tac and the gimbal videos to the New York Times. Before then they were saying it was an unnamed source. Well, it was now named, and it was Lue Elizondo who released those. He gave them to Chris Mellon. Chris Mellon gave them to the New York Times. So during the course of the Whistleblower Investigation Act, a lot of things came to light that we didn't know about because Lue opened a can of worms. In 2021, we got a copy of this letter from Senator Harry Reid. The letter that Harry Reid released, it started what was imminent to all of us, because it not only confirmed that Lue worked for the DoD program ATTIP, but that the program was unclassified. So the videos being released were not a violation of releasing any classified data, which is what the DoD claimed Lue did. This is where UAP become real to the rest of the world. It's something most of us have already known for a very long time, but this is where UAP became real to everybody else. Lue Elizondo was quickly cleared of any wrongdoing by the Pentagon, because in that letter from Harry Reid, it said that Harry Reid started that program, that Lue Elizondo worked for that program, that the government funded that program, and that that program investigated UAPs, crash retrievals, and reverse engineering. He put that in writing, and that was the confirmation that everyone needed by someone very high up in the government that that was going on. Now, last month, I discussed a little bit that Major David Grush had lost his security clearance after he testified before Congress in July 2023. If you lose your security clearance, you can no longer work or qualify for federal government or government employment as a contractor. Major Grush had 20 years in the Air Force, so Major Grush had a TRICARE, and he had his blue card, and he had his pension. Lue Elizondo didn't have any of those. He was only in the Army for, I believe it was 13 years when you do the math. So Lue Elizondo didn't have insurance for his family. He didn't have a monthly government pension. He didn't have TRICARE, was a really big deal. He had a daughter in college, and he had one heading for college. So Lue had to get a job. So we're going to start discussing the years that Lue started making a living, discussing his years working inside the Pentagon, working for UFOs. Why is this book so important? Because it chronicles the journey of Lue Elizondo while he worked at the DoD regarding UAP investigations, intelligence, and counterintelligence. His clearance of any wrongdoing brought us the clarification by Lue and Senator Reid that the government has and currently does investigate UAP, UFOs, whatever you call them. It opened the door to other whistleblowers to come forward and tell their stories openly, as they have been doing for the last few years. We also, through that, have found out about many other government agencies that are out there, that were active, that are currently active, and are still investigating UAP. Now, some things were classified, but as you recall, programs regarding unconventional technologies report directly to the Director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA, and to Congress. And Congress is pissed because they haven't been lawfully informed of where our money has been spent regarding UAP and their investigations and crash retrievals and reverse engineering. It's like they were stealing money. They were stealing our money. And stealing money from Congress is like stealing money from the mob. That never ends well. This book is excellent. While I'm not going to give you an old-fashioned book report here, I do just want to hit a couple of points that were really interesting, and I just want to assure you, you can verify all the claims that Lue has in this book. You can verify his sources. The book offers a detailed account of his challenges within the program to investigate the phenomena and the challenges to do his job. To me, even though after NDAA was supposed to have all these agencies report to each other and talk to each other, to me, after reading this book, it didn't seem to me like they were talking to each other at all. They were clashing. They were always clashing over each other because they all wanted funding. They all wanted money. So it wasn't their money they were playing with. It was our money they're playing with. I enjoyed, though, hearing the measures to which our government has gone to investigate this topic. They're quite thorough. They're quite thorough at quantifying and qualifying the objects that military and government sources are viewing. Very, very thorough. Remember the reports he investigated came from government sources. The agencies Lue worked for didn't care what we saw, didn't care what we reported. They only wanted reliable sources, sources from the military and from the government. After resigning from the DoD, Lue got a job with a To the Stars Academy and introduced us to the 5 observables that are here on the screen. He began talking extensively in podcasts and interviews and investigative shows. He did all this because he had to support his family. They didn't have any insurance. They didn't have any money coming in. He didn't have all that stuff. I've spoken about the government think tank before, and he put them in writing in this book. The think tank came up with the classifications and systems for orbs and other aerial phenomenon. They put pen to paper and they identified them in what was called the Immaculate Constellation Program. Lue worked with that program. And he identified in his book the scientists who were instrumental in that. They were like Dr. Hal Puthoff, Dr. Eric Davis, Gary Nolan, James Lukatsky. They all work very closely within the ATTIP program. That database that they put up, the Immaculate Constellation, is just more proof that that program was handed to Congress in the November 2024 hearings. Lue Elizondo was also in that hearing too, but that was, another program that was hidden from Congress that we were paying for. So now Lue is a really likable guy. He is. He's an extremely likable guy, and he was the guy that they would send in when, military members maybe saw something in the sky, they saw a UFO, and they were a little hesitant to report it because it was very detrimental to their careers to do so. But they wanted the information. So they would send Lue in, and part of his job was to investigate that and to make sure that there were no threats to our national security. So they're very reluctant to talk, and sometimes he would say to them, buddy to buddy, look, I know you saw something. It's okay. What you need to know right now is that I work for a special access program, and it's very likely that you came across one of our technologies. Look, We do the best we can to hide these things, but people like you are very observant and sometimes you see them. So we would appreciate it very much if you would tell me exactly what you saw so we can do a better job in the future to keep these things hidden. So, like I said, Lue is a very, very likable guy, and he got a lot of military, and he got them to tell him exactly what they saw and where they saw it. Of course, most times they were not our technology that they had seen. This book also brings to light two very powerful forces within the DoD. And these two forces are the ones that are responsible for keeping disclosure non-transparent. Those would be the Collins Elite and the Legacy programs. One program wants to kill all efforts to investigate the UAP topic, and the other wants to investigate it but keep all the information in the dark. Both operated in complete secrecy until this book clearly defined them and brought their ugliness out into the open. Lue gave a very good example in this book regarding someone he had worked with for years. He had no idea that this guy was involved with one of these programs. He said that this guy was one of his mentors, and soon he became his boss in the DIA. He said that he was smart, calm, cool, collected, and had an illustrious career in the CIA before coming on board with ODNI. That's the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence. You know, Lue was very excited when this guy became his boss, but soon that changed. Lue was walking up the hall one day on his way to work, and this guy came running down the hall after him, pointing his finger in his chest, putting his finger in his face. Lue, you know, we already know what these things are, right? And Lue kind of just looked at him and dazed and thought, wow, oh wow, could he be talking about, UAP? Because, to that point, Lue really didn't know what they were, where they came from. He just investigated them. He wasn't investigating where they came from. He was trying to find out, what were they here? Were they a threat to our military? Were they a threat to our government? But now his boss is telling him, you know exactly what these are. And Lue had always hoped, he didn't think it was possible, but he had always hoped that it was a secret government program in the black budgets. And he had this feeling that he was about to be told by his boss exactly what it was. So his boss says to Lue, have you read your Bible lately, Lue? And Lue said, sir, I am familiar with the Bible. Now, Lue was raised Jewish, so apparently his boss didn't know that Lue was Jewish, which someone from the CIA, you think they would know that, but Lue, he says to him, Lue, you're opening a can of worms playing with this stuff. It's demonic. There is no reason we should be looking into this. We already know what they are and where they come from. They are the deceivers, the demons. Yes, that's real. A senior government intelligence official put his religious beliefs ahead of national security. So if you're keeping score of what side is what, he would be on the Collins elite side. I found some information on the Black Vault via FOIAs. There's some FOIAs on the Black Vault, and I found that Holloman has some legacy programs there. So I have those FOIAs sitting on my desk, and so I know which side of the thing that the programs that Holloman reside on. But also one of the things that had happened when this guy became head of the DIA is that Skinwalker Ranch lost their funding. Skinwalker Ranch lost their funding, which I was shocked they had it to begin with. But I was telling you earlier about that guy, Jay Stratton. Jay Stratton brought Lue Elizondo on board to AAWSAP and ATTIP, but he also brought him to Skinwalker Ranch. Bob Bigelow at the time was the contractor running Skinwalker Ranch. He had bought all that land in the 90s so his scientists could study what he called unusual occurrences. In 2008, the government had committed to studying and analyzing anomalous activity that bordered on the paranormal. In 2010, they lost their funding for that when this guy became head of the DIA. Lue never really put that guy's name in the book. He used an alias, but you can Google it and see who was the head of the DIA in 2010. Jay Stratton, like Lue, was one of the highest ranking civilian employees, and they both investigated UAP. Lue from the counterintelligence point of view and how it may or may not jeopardize national security, and Jay Stratton was in charge of reverse engineering. You know, the nuts and bolts of the UAP and how they worked, which they say they don't do. They don't do reverse engineering, but Jay Stratton, that was his job when he was at ATTIP and AAWSAP. Jay Stratton said that everything regarding UAP went across his desk from 2008 till he resigned in 2021. And him and Lue were up to their ears in Skinwalker Ranch when they were part of AAWSAP. And after Lue resigned, you know, the UAP task. While working at the UAP task force, Jay Stratton worked with a Dr. Travis Taylor. Many of us know him from the History Channel show The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. In 2022, Dr. Taylor revealed to the show and the crew that he'd been working secretly with the UAP task force while investigating activity on that ranch. Later that season, you see Jay Stratton. They introduced him on that show, Skinwalker Ranch. He didn't say too much. He just walked around and looked at a lot of things. They said he was a consultant from the Bob Bigelow days. Now, both Jay Stratton and Dr. Taylor currently work for a government contractor called Radiance Technology. Radiance Technology, remember that name. Stratton had been on the show and he discussed the government's involvement when Bob Bigelow owned the ranch. Many asked, why did Bob Bigelow sell Skinwalker Ranch? It was just very simple. It was finances. In 2010, they lost all their funding. He sold the ranch. And, you know, in 2021, Jay Stratton resigned from that DOD job. You'll see him shortly. He's going to put up a book. One of the really cool things is he invented this technology. He invented this saying which was called the hitchhiker effect. And the hitchhiker effect, that's when strange apparitions and terrifying experiences not only injured the people at the ranch, people working on the ranch, but it followed them home. It followed them home and it began to harass their family members and invade their personal space. This term became very clear to Lue Elizondo when a hitchhiker followed him home and made itself visible to his wife, his kids, and his next door neighbor. My favorite chapter in this book was chapter 6. It was all about orbs. He discusses just how often orbs have been reported around military test ranges and sensitive military facilities by commercial pilots, military pilots, eyewitnesses on the ground. He was shocked to find that his colleagues experienced orbs in their homes. He had never had any interaction with orbs until he started working with the ATTIP program. Remember, he wasn't one of us. He had no interest in UFOs, any of that, until he started working at ATTIP. But one day, him and his wife were at the house, and his wife was a skeptic. She had no care about UFOs. She thought, she had thought it was stupid. But one day they're going down the hall of their house and an orb starts going down the hallway. It was green, it was a glowing ball, probably the size of a basketball, had soft, undefined edges, and it floated. It floated down the hall right past them, slowly past the kitchen and down to the bedroom door. It was just below ceiling height, and then it disappeared into the wall. And Lue said he remembers she turned around and she looked at him with a very confused look on her face, and then she says, "Does this have something to do with your job?" He couldn't tell her because at the time the project was classified. All he could say was, "Don't worry, it's nothing that will hurt you." Also, while at home, Lue had noticed orbs in the house. While working at the dining room table, he would have his laptop and all his papers spread out, and he said he would have this feeling someone was watching him, and he would look up, and there would be an orb up in the corner of the room, just perched there, watching him. It really upset him when his children told them that they saw orbs appearing in the air and hovering over them while they played in the playroom. His children were younger then. That was very disturbing. Also, one time while in the backyard at a barbecue with all his neighbors, one appeared, floated past them all while they stood at the barbecue drinking beer and eating ribs. And his neighbor jokingly said to him, "Hey Lue, is that something from your government job follows you home?" How true that was, but of course Lue couldn't acknowledge it. They just all had a chuckle and laughed about it and didn't really realize that indeed it was. So he said there had been numerous reports of negative biological effects. He talks about that in this chapter. The negative biological effects associated with encounters with orbs. The injuries sustained from some sort of directed energy exposure, almost like radiation or radiation poisoning, but mostly that was only from the blue orbs because he didn't worry because the ones he saw in the house were green or white. He resigned from the Pentagon in 2017 in protest of excessive bureaucracy regarding UAP, and he wanted to bring awareness to the issue. He felt that we were entitled to have a greater awareness from our government regarding these objects, what they have done, what they can do, and how they can harm us if we try to interact with them. Now, when asked if UAP are something we should be worried about hurting us, he explains just how the DoD determines if something is a threat, how they determine if our adversaries are a threat to us. They determine their capabilities and their intent. We know UAP's capabilities, the 5 observables: instantaneous acceleration, hypersonic velocity, low observability, transmedium travel. They can travel between airspace and water easily. And then, of course, there's that anti-gravity thing. We can't catch them. And as far as we know, we haven't communicated with them. So we don't know their intent. So should we be afraid? Should we be afraid? So what is he doing these days? Lue had to move to a ranch. He moved to a ranch in Wyoming for a more secluded lifestyle. He has 6 German Shepherds for security. He has a podcast on YouTube. He says he posts when he has something significant to say. He doesn't just post crap for the sake of doing it, even though he does get a couple of bucks for doing it, but that wasn't his intent. He keeps his classified information to himself, regardless of who asks for it. He says he won't go to jail for anyone. He's not going to walk around in an orange jumpsuit for anyone. He doesn't open his mouth unless he can prove what he's talking about. When asked, he is told he's only told us 5% of what he knows regarding the UAP subject. So look, listen to what this guy says. Ignore the red herrings that people throw up in front of us to try to distract us. And remember that people are demanding the truth. And there is something out there that is far more advanced than we are. You know, the truth is the truth. Many things in the UAP government programs are classified, and many are not. Lue says, you know, like I said, he's only discussed 5% of what he knows about UFOs that are unclassified. And more programs are becoming unclassified. And he has a lot more to say. I just want to leave you with a couple of little quotes here. These are important players in the puzzle that Jay Stratton I talked about, and also Christopher Mellon, who was the former deputy assistant of the Secretary of Defense for Clinton and Bush. He states that if it was not for Lue's persistence and courage, the U.S. government would still be denying the existence of UAPs and failing to investigate a phenomenon that may well prove to be the greatest discovery in our history. Keep your eyes and ears on Jay Stratton and Chris Mellon. This is a quote that Lue leaves us in his book. And to all those who remain in the shadows, whether you had a UAP encounter or are aware of the facts that we feel should be known by all, know that you have a voice. When governments lie to their people, all of democracy is at risk. Keep the faith. We hear you. This was a great book. Wow, it was a great book. It opened my eyes. I never realized how deep the government was involved and the amount of money that was spent on these programs. Look, I hope you all enjoyed this presentation. I hope you read the book. If you haven't read the book, you know, you really should watch some podcasts about it. You know, I haven't been able to think about it, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it since I read it, and how it proves so many points, and it makes so many things much clearer, much clearer. Thank you all for your time today. Again, I'm Maria Tellier, the New Mexico State Director for MUFON. Catch you next month on Coffee Cups and Flying Saucers.